May I start? Okay. Good afternoon. I am very happy and honored to present this tutorial in this school. I give my thanks, of course, to the invitation to present this course. The topic I will present is called unification in modal logic. In fact, unification in propositional logics. And I have been interested recently, in fact 6 years ago, by this topic. But in fact, I was always wondering why usually people developing new propositional logics, they show that there is some complete axiomatization. They prove some finite model property, or they prove decidability of the membership problem in this logic. They can also show some other interesting property. But usually, to consider the unifiability question is not addressed. And if it is addressed only by the same people. So this course is a kind of advertisement to the topic. Still, I believe it needs to be advertised. So this is the plan of the tutorial. Today we will do some historical overview of the unification problem. I will give not so much proof, and I will give some basic definition about the unification theory. So unification is the problem of making things equal. And we can consider, for example, two first-order terms defined by means of function symbol constant. These terms may have variables. Maybe they are not identical, but if we replace in a good way the variable of these terms by other terms, we can make the two terms equal. So it is a very important and it has been addressed within the context of automated deduction and term rewriting system. There is the so-called Knuth-Bendix algorithm within the context of term rewriting system, which tries to make confluent some reduction relation determined by an equational theory. And if we interest in the resolution principle and its implementation as a programming language within the context of Prolog, the unification step is one of the most important steps in this setting, and it has been studied first by Herbrand long time ago, but then more recently by Robinson and its continuator in the context of logic programming. So, for example, here it is not at all inside propositional logic. It is suppose that we have some function symbol, a binary function symbol, f and j, and two constants, a and b, and some variable x and y, and we consider these two first-order terms. Obviously, they are not identical. So if we consider the empty equational theory, we cannot deduce that S equals T. And the unification problem is to find appropriate instance of this variable such that in the considered equational theory, for example, the empty equational theory, they will become, the equality S between S and T will be derivable. So in our example, if we replace X by this term, and y by a, then S and T will be identical, and therefore they will be the equality between S and T will be valid. So the substitution which replaces x by j of ab and y by a, we will write like this. It is one of the standard way, mainly in the context of automatic deduction, to write substitution. So it means that sigma is a function replacing the variable x by this term and replacing the variable y by this term. And it is called a unifier of the two terms. If we consider some properties of the function symbol, for example, if the function symbol f should be commutative, if we assume this equality to be true in all models that we will consider, f is commutative, then, of course, the previous substitution is still a unifier of the term s and t, but also this substitution, which replaces just y by a. Because if you don't touch x, but you replace y by a, because of the commutativity of f, the two terms s and t becomes equal in all models where f is commutative. Moreover, we can remark that the substitution delta is more general than the substitution sigma, because delta only interests in y, and sigma also replaces y by the same a, but also interests in the variable x. To give a more formal definition what it means to be more general substitution, delta is more general than sigma, because sigma, as a substitution, can be obtained as the composition of delta with another substitution which replaces x by j of ab. So here I am giving some concept related to the unification theory. In some cases, yes, if two terms can be unified, there is a unique. To say there is a single and unique, it is a little bit excessive. There is a unique, if we consider the preordered set of all substitutions. This set is preordered by the binary relation between substitutions, saying that one substitution is more general than another. It is a preorder. Sometimes there is a unique least upper bound in the set of all unifiers, and we call it a most general unifier. And in this case, in the case when the equational theory we consider is the empty equational theory, if two terms s and t are unifiable, they have a most general unifier. If we assume that one function symbol, like the function f that we have considered, is commutative, it may happen that two terms s and t are unifiable, but there exists no most general unifier of them. But in any case, when we consider commutativity of function symbol, each pair of unifiable terms possesses a finite set of maximal unifier, maximal with respect to this preordered relation. If we assume now that the function symbol f is associative, then things are changing a lot, because the two terms still are unifiable, but now there is infinitely many unifiers of them, or maximal unifiers of them, which consist to replace y by a each time, and x by such more and more complex terms. And because of the associativity of the function symbol f, all these substitutions are unifiers of s and t. But in this case, s and t does not possess a finite set of maximal unifiers. And again, if we assume now that f is both associative and commutative, then for every pair of terms which are unifiable, there exist finitely many maximal unifiers. So to give some idea of what it means to study the unification problem first in equational theory. Now, if we consider a propositional logic, and it will be our main interest, but by propositional logic, I don't give a precise definition. I will consider mainly intuitionistic logic, modal logics, intermediate logics, and fragment of modal logic like the so-called description logic. The unification problem in the context of a propositional logic can be expressed in the same way, given a formula phi. So here I insist that the formula is composed of n propositional variables, p1 to pn. And we will say that it is unifiable with respect to this logic L if it is possible to replace the variable, to uniformly replace the variable of this formula by other formula, key1 to key n, in such a way that the resulting formula belongs to the logic. Here I don't say if the logic is axiomatically presented or just defined as the logic of a class of frame. The formula is unifiable if it is possible to find an instance of it which belongs to the logic. Of course, normally we should say that a unification problem is not just a single formula, but a finite set of pairs of formulas. And we should say that this problem has a solution if there exists. So this problem is unifiable. We should define to be if there exists some substitution sigma is L unifiable, if there exists a substitution sigma such that all these equivalence belongs to the logic. But of course, if we have the conjunction symbol and if we have the equivalence symbol with a more or less standard interpretation, this problem can be reduced to a single formula, to the unifiability of a single formula. But in description logic, for example, there is no equivalence symbol, or negation is restricted. And also, if we consider some fragment of intuitionistic logic, the implication conjunctive fragment of intuitionistic logic, well, in some fragment, it is not possible to restrict the unification problem to a single formula. If such formula is unifiable by means of this replacement, then we write the substitution sigma. This substitution is a unifier of the formula phi. It replaces P1 by Q1, etc. So, what is the origin of the unification problem? One motivation to consider it is to say that it is strongly related to the admissibility problem. And the admissibility problem is to consider inference rules of that kind. So here it is an inference rule with m hypotheses and one conclusion. I also insist here by writing the propositional variable that occurs in the different formulas. And within the context of a propositional logic L, such a rule is admissible if, for all possible ways to replace the variable, so for all formulas that will replace the variable P1 to Pn, if the resulting formula phi1, well, if the hypothesis of the rule, after we apply this substitution, if they belongs to the logic, then the corresponding instance of psi belongs also to the logic. So it is a very important problem to be able to decide if a given inference rule is admissible. of course, well, I have written by definition, but in fact I am not sure. Maybe it exists propositional logic for which modus ponens is not admissible, but this logic will be maybe too exotic for us. According to this definition, the rule of modus ponens is admissible if we assume at least a minimal set of properties for the implication symbol. So what is the relationship between unification of formula and admissibility of inference rule? It is the following. If you consider a formula phi, it is unifiable in the context of some logic L, if and only if this inference rule, which of course is not such an interesting inference rule because its conclusion is the constant symbol false, if and only if this rule is non-admissible. Yes, it is not difficult to show this equivalence, of course. For example, if the formula phi is unifiable, then there is a way to replace its variable and to make the corresponding instance of phi a member of the logic. But then if the rule were admissible, we could apply the rule for the corresponding instance of phi, and then it should be needed. It means that false should belong to the logic. And of course, I have assumed the logic to be consistent. There is one remark that should be done here. If a logic L is included in a logic L prime, and if a formula phi is unifiable in L, then of course it is unifiable in L prime, because every formula which belongs to L prime. But it is not the same for admissibility. If a rule is admissible for L, and then the logic L is included in the logic L prime, of course, it does not imply that the rule is also admissible in L. So a question at some moment was asked, and it is about the decidability of the admissibility problem in propositional logic such as modal logic S4 or intuitionistic propositional logic. And the answer has been given by Vladimir Rybakov, who has shown that. I will try to give the proof later in the week or next week about the Rybakov result. He has shown that the admissibility problem in this logic is decidable. The question that was asked about the decidability of the admissibility problem, it is not asked for the classical propositional logic, because for classical propositional logic, admissibility problem is equivalent to the validity problem, thanks to the structural completeness of the classical propositional logic. So what does it mean? Let us give some definitions. Suppose L is axiomatically presented. We can define the standard notion of a derivation in this logic L, derivation of a formula from some finite set of hypotheses. And a derivation is a sequence of formula, the last one being psi, and all the formula in the sequence being either an instance of an axiom or obtained from preliminary formula by means of the rule of the logic, or they can be one of the hypotheses. So this is a standard definition of derivation. And the standard definition of derivability for a rule is to say that such an inference rule is derivable if there exists in the logic a derivation of the consequence of the rule by means of the hypothesis of the rule. And we say that the logic L is structurally complete if every admissible rule is derivable in L. Obviously, every derivable rule is admissible. For example, in classical logic or in intuitionistic logic, if a rule is if a rule of that kind is derivable, then by means of the deduction theorem, the conjunction of the phis implies the psi is derivable. And therefore, by means of the rule of uniform substitution, it is possible to show that the rule is also admissible. But for some logic, like S4 and twistor-listic logic, there exist admissible rules which are not derivable. Yes, this is what exactly I was saying. Classical logic is structurally complete, and therefore the admissibility problem for classical logic is like the validity problem, co-NP complete. And in fact, because the unification problem can be reduced to the non-admissibility problem in a very easy way, the unification problem is equivalent to the satisfiability problem. A formula with variable P1 to Pn is unifiable in classical logic if and only if it is satisfiable. The story is different if the formula contains what Rybakov and others call parameters or constant. If we interest in a formula phi, which contains only variable, then in the language of classical logic, this formula is unifiable if and only if it is satisfiable. But if the formula contains not only variable but also constant, which also will be interpreted like the variable, but they are called constant because it is not permitted when we apply a substitution to replace this atomic formula by more complex formula. The unification problem is not anymore equivalent to the satisfiability problem. We will see later to what it is equivalent. Okay, by the way, at any moment you can stop and ask a question if I am not clear enough.
So you said that it seems that derivability of a rule implies admissibility even without deduction theorem.
No, with deduction theorem, I know how to prove that derivability implies admissibility. It is in the first chapter of the Shagrov-Zakharyachev book. I don't remember which page, but it is there. And there is the argument. I don't say that in any propositional logic it is the case, in fact.
So just to make things to better, isn't that the case that suppose the rule is derivable, then if the premises of this, if the assumptions, the hypothesis of this long derivation are theorems of the logic, then the conclusion is the theorem of the logic.
It does not.
That means
It does
that
not
the rule
use deduction theorem.
it does not use deduction theorem. But the notion of proof from hypothesis already implies. So, okay.
Might be. But I have done my preparation with the help of this book, and maybe there is no need. Yes.
Okay. Well, check that.
Okay, to see an example of admissible rule, this rule, within the context of modal logic, we extend the language made of the Boolean connective by means of such unary connective. Such a rule is admissible in the minimal modal logic K, but I don't know if it is about its derivability. So I don't know if it is needed to make such recap of K, but let me do once and then I will It is axiomatically presented by considering all tautologies plus this axiom, called sometimes the distributivity axiom, by modus ponens and by the necessitation rule from phi infer box phi. So this is the axiomatical presentation of modal logic K. And to prove that the rule is admissible, of course, there is a semantic way by means of Kripke models. But if you are not aware, if someone is not aware of Kripke models, there is a very simple way to prove admissibility of such rule. And for example, it is enough to consider the following function t, which associates to every formula another formula simply by eliminating the outside occurrence of the modality. So the translation t is this function. It's just eliminate the first occurrence of a modality if there is, otherwise it does nothing.
Only the first one?
Only the first one. The definition is like this. You see here, t does not occur. So t of box phi is phi. Okay? By induction on the proof of phi, so there is a claim. But if phi is derivable by this axiom system, any arbitrary formula phi, then T of phi is also derivable. It is not difficult to show, and it is proved by induction on the length of the proof of phi in this axiomatization. And therefore, if there is, take an arbitrary instance of this formula, it will be box phi, and suppose that box phi belongs to K, so it means that box phi is derivable. By means of the claim, T of box phi is derivable, but it means just that phi is derivable. So it shows very simply the admissibility of such rule. To illustrate the fact that for some admissible rule, it is not difficult to show their admissibility. Okay. There is another which I like. It is the so-called Loeb rule in the context of Gödel-Loeb logic. And here the rule is derivable if we have an axiomatical presentation of GL by means of this axiom plus the Loeb axiom. So in this case, the rule not only it is admissible, but it is derivable. But there is other cases, for example, this one. It is called the Lehmann-Scott inference rule in modal logic S4. S4 is an extension of the modal logic K by means of simple axioms. And this rule is admissible but not derivable. I will not try to prove that it is admissible, but I can say that this rule comes from the intuitionistic version of it. There is an intuitionistic Lehmann-Scott rule which is admissible in intuitionistic logic. And if you know what is the Gödel translation going from the language of intuitionistic logic to the modal language, you will recognize that this inference rule, which is admissible in S4, corresponds to, I am going to the next slides, to the so-called Lehmann-Scott rule, which is this one. There is other example of admissible inference rule in intuitionistic logic. These four rules are not derivable, but they are admissible.
Is that always the case that if we take the Gödel translation of intuitionistic admissible but non-derivable rule, the result will be the admissible but non-derivable rule in this form?
I don't know. I don't know. There is connection between the admissibility and in intuitionistic logic by Rybakov, it has been a long time ago, and the admissibility of the translation of that rule by means of the Gödel translation, but if there is, I don't know it precisely. The proof that the Lehmann-Scott rule is admissible is not difficult, and the proof that it is admissible is non-difficult, and the proof that it is not derivable is not difficult also. So Lehmann-Scott rule. Is not derivable. It is not derivable because if it were derivable, the following formula would be valid, and it is the Scott formula, so it is the because the formula is not valid in intuitionistic logic. And it is not valid because there is a counter model of it, finite one, which is this one, in which, of course, the relation is reflexive and transitive. So at the root of this counter model, the disjunction is not true. Not P is not true because P is true here, and not P is not true because P does not hold here. So the conclusion of the formula is not true at the root, but by very simple verification, you can prove that this implication holds in the model. And it is admissible because
Can you explain again what's the connection between the derivability and this formula? So why this rule would be derivable, why this formula would be valid?
Please say it again. What is the relation between the admissibility and
derivability and validity of the formula that you put, you just erased?
the same. By the deduction theorem, or maybe by something more general. By the deduction theorem, if this rule were derivable, then the Scott formula I have written here would be derivable. Would be derivable. So this rule, Lehmann-Scott rule, is admissible because suppose phi two formula phi, there is only one variable, phi is such that not phi or not phi is not valid. Then it means that, of course, not phi is not valid, and also not phi is not valid, and also not phi is not valid. Then, because this formula the first connective is a negation, they are not also tautologies, classical logic. And it is a consequence because the first connective is not, it follows from the Gliven-Cause property. And therefore, there is model of this formula, a classical model. So there is a model, classical model, in which phi is false, and there is a classical model in which phi is true. Now, put a new reflexive point and consider this reflexive transitive model. It happens that in the root here, so let us call x0. x0 as the root of this intuitionistic model does not satisfy not phi, because not phi is true here. And it does not also satisfy phi, not phi, because phi is true here. So x0 does not satisfy this one, but it can be proved that x0 satisfies the corresponding instance of the Lehmann-Scott rule, phi or not phi. And therefore, no, we want. Yes, probably this one, yes. This one. And then it proved that this formula does not belong to intuitionistic logic. So to assume the conclusion of the rule, an instance of the conclusion of the rule does not belong to the logic, implies that the corresponding instance of the hypothesis of the rule does not belong also, and it shows admissibility of the rule. But as we see, it is not so obvious to prove admissibility, and so the question that was put forward in 1975, whether admissibility is decidable, was an interesting question. What happened in the context of Boolean algebras? Boolean algebras or classical logic, it will be the same more or less for us. So in Boolean algebra, it is an equational theory in which the connective or the operator satisfies the laws of Boolean algebra, de Morgan law, etc. We consider Boolean terms which are defined by some set of variables using the classical Boolean, standard Boolean connectives. And what happens to the unification problem? If we consider a variable-free term, so a term which does not contain any occurrence of a variable, then this term, because we are in the context of Boolean algebra, this variable-free term is either equal to false in every Boolean algebra or equal to true, of course. So in this context, a substitution is also a function sigma which associates to every variable a Boolean terms. And such a function sigma which associates a Boolean terms to variables can be extended in a homomorphic way to the set of all terms. there is a tradition in this context is to consider that the substitution moves only finitely many variables. It is not permitted to use substitution which are moving infinitely many variables. I said that a substitution moves a variable if sigma moves x, the variable x, if sigma x is a Boolean term different from x. So it is not permitted, and we assume that substitution are moving finitely many variables. So in this context, a unification problem traditionally is a set of pairs of terms, S1 equals T1, etc., Sn equals Tn. And the question is to determine if there exists a unifier of this unification problem, that is to say, if there exists a substitution sigma such that when we apply it to when we apply the substitution sigma to the terms, pairs of terms become Boolean equivalent. That is to say, we want for all I the sigma of Si and sigma of Ti to be equally interpreted in all Boolean algebras. And we said that sigma is a unifier of the problem. We have said before that the unification problem of a formula phi considered in the context of classical propositional logic, when the formula phi does not contain any parameters, when it is only based on variable, its unifiability is equivalent to its satisfiability. Here, the same. So it implies that within the context of classical propositional logic, the unifiability of a single formula is NP-complete problem because it is equivalent to the satisfiability of the formula. Here, of course, we can consider not this unification problem P, but we can associate to it a problem P prime, which consists of exactly one equation of the form not S1 or T1 and S1 or not T1 and etc. for all n equals true. And of course, the unifiability, if there is no parameter, if these terms are only based on variables, the unifiability of this problem P prime is equivalent to the satisfiability of this Boolean expression. But it is interesting to consider fragment of classical logic in which there is no implication and negation. For example, the fragment of classical logic in which there is only positive fragment, there is only conjunction and disjunction. What is the complexity of the unification problem in this setting? I don't know. Also, another interesting fragment of the classical language or the intuitionistic language, which is of course the same, is to consider just the implication fragment of it. In intuitionistic logic, the implication fragment is very important. And we can address such unification problem if we restrict the language. And sometimes there is a surprise. Okay. But if we are not aware that it is possible to reduce the unifiability of a set of pairs of Boolean terms to the unifiability of exactly one Boolean expression, we can, of course, prove that this problem is NP-complete by considering the following argument. First, we will say that the substitution is ground if it replaces each variable by a variable-free term. So, and in Boolean logic, every variable-free term is either equivalent to true or false. So, and second, if a unification problem P like this has a unifier, then it possesses a ground unifier. It is related to the rule of uniform substitution. So since up to Boolean equivalence there is only two variable free terms, false and true, to determine if this unification problem P has a solution, it is enough to non-deterministically choose for each variable either the variable true, false or true, and then to decide in polynomial time if the resulting instance of the unification problem P is a tautology. I think it is not.
So this proof does not rely on the fact that we can express the equivalence connected in our
No, no. Suppose P, for example, is the problem not X or Y is equal to true and X and not C is equal to Y. Yes, we can immediately see, a unifier of it. Just replace X by true, false. Replace Y by false, and replace this one by anything, by itself. And this is a unifier of it, because applying sigma, the left part here will be true, and applying sigma, the left part will be false, and the right part will be false also. So to solve such unification problem in Boolean algebra, it is an NP-complete problem. It is the same complexity as the standard satisfiability problem when the terms are parameter free.
Can you explain again why you can always, why if there is a general unifier, then there is also a ground unifier? Or did you explain that?
I have said because of the rule of uniform substitution in classical logic, but it can be formally explained like this. Suppose that the unification problem is such a finite set of Boolean terms. Let sigma be a unifier of P. What does it mean? It means that in all Boolean algebras, the term which we obtain from Si by applying the substitution sigma, and the term which is obtained from Ti by applying the substitution sigma are interpreted by the same, in all Boolean algebra, these terms are interpreted by the same element of the domain of the algebra. Or we can say these two Boolean terms are equivalent in classical logic. It is exactly the same for I equals 1 to n. But now take tau, take a ground substitution tau. So tau is a substitution which replaces each variable by either false or true, the Boolean constant false or true. Because of this validity,
when you say a ground, you mean arbitrary. You can say
arbitrary.
You choose it in some special way.
No, I don't choose. I take a, yes, if you want, we can take tau to be uniformly equal to false, for example. Tau is the substitution which replaces each variable by false or by true. It does not matter. Then, because of this validity in all Boolean algebra, these terms may still contain variables. So it makes sense to apply to them the substitution tau. These two terms, still maybe they contain variable. Because sigma has just replaced the variable in S and T by some Boolean terms, but the Boolean terms replacing the variable may still contain variable. Now I apply tau to this one. It is like in modal logic or in classical logic to apply a substitution to a formula. And because the rule of uniform substitution preserves validity, this equality is still holds in all Boolean algebra. But to apply the substitution tau to the term sigma s or to the term sigma t, it is the same as to apply the composition of the two substitutions
Yes, thank you. I got it.
to the term s and t. Maybe I have not said what is the composition formally.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay. And because tau is such a substitution which is ground, it is possible easily to show that its composition with sigma is also ground. And so this ground substitution is a unifier of P. Thank you for your question. Yes, this is what I was saying before. Here we have seen some example of unification problem and how but there is a concept which is interesting. It is if there is a unification problem, for example in Boolean algebra, suppose we have such a unification problem, not only we want to decide if it has a solution, if there exists a unifier, but we want also to characterize the set of unifier of such unification problem in a good way. So the best way to solve the set of unifiers of a unification problem is to say there exists one unifier of the problem which is more general than all others. This is the most perfect situation. And if it exists, this most general unifier is called a most general unifier of the problem. And if it is, then we say that the unification problem is unitary because we can characterize its set of solutions, its set of unifiers, by means of exactly one unifier, which is the most general unifier. And it happens that in Boolean algebra, like in classical propositional logic, every unification problem which has a solution possesses a most general one. And we say that it possesses a minimal complete set of unifiers, and its cardinality is 1. So I will say formally what does it mean to be a minimal complete set of unifiers later. But here it is to introduce a concept which is the notion of most general unifier. We will see that there exists a very simple propositional logic for which some unification problem which has a solution does not possess a minimal complete set of unifiers of cardinality 1. For example, in intuitionistic logic, there exist unifiable formula which are not unitary. In S4, the same. In S5, all unifiable formula are unitary. And in modal logic K, it is the worst situation. There exists unifiable formula for which they are unifiable formula. They possess unifiers, and sometimes they possess a lot of unifiers. But there exists very simple formula which are unifiable in K, and they do not possess a minimal complete set of unifiers at all. So it is considered to be the worst situation. But this property of the unitariness of classical propositional logic or Boolean algebra is known. In fact, in these two papers, it is a survey of what was known some 30 years ago. I'm not sure, but I believe the unitariness of classical logic or Boolean algebra was already known by Lovenheim. but I'm not sure he was aware that he was knowing this property, but he has constructing all tools which are enough to show the unitariness. But probably he was not aware of what it means, but yes. Now some modal considerations. So the language of modal logic extends the language of classical and intuitionistic logic by means of modal connective of RET1. The diamond is traditionally defined like this as the dual of the box. And examples of modal formula are this one. We will consider only normal modal logic. That is to say, a set L of formula that contain all tautology, that contain all instances of the Aristotle axiom, which are closed under modus ponens, and the rule of necessitation. There is some mistake?
Finally, there is some notion in logic named after Aristotle.
I don't know, I have found this.
Modus ponens, it's a certain way.
Distributivity axiom.
Yes, sometimes it is called distributive, but I don't remember why I have seen Aristotle axiom. Maybe Vladimir Rybakov, I don't know. No, but this course I have used for other people than you. You are not.
But we like it, so we are not against it.
So the least normal modal logic is the one we have already considered, with the Aristotle axiom. And extension of it, the most famous, for example, are this one. One of the most famous, of course, there is a lot. We shall also consider an extension of this standard language of modal logic, the extension consisting of, by means of the so-called universal modality, which I will denote like this, and the corresponding diamond, which is defined like this. So, such a formula, box U phi, it should mean phi is true everywhere. Everywhere phi holds. This universal modality has been introduced maybe by Prior in the 60s, but it has been also studied by in Sofia, Bulgaria, in the 1980s, and then developed within the context of hybrid logic and many other contexts. So, and since it corresponds within the Kripke semantic to the universal accessibility relation between possible words, in any normal modal logic which includes the universal modality, we should have, of course, the Aristotle axiom, the necessitation, and this axiom corresponding to the fact that the universal relation within a set is an equivalence relation. Here I have forgotten to add the axiom saying that box U phi implies box phi. Okay, why we will consider the universal modality? Because there is an interesting result of Frank Voltaire and Mikhail Zakharyachev showing that the unification problem and also the admissibility problem in a normal modal logic between K and K4 containing the universal modality, such normal modal logic, they have undecidable admissibility and unification problems. So I will try to introduce this result later, and we will use the universal modality. In modal logic, the same definition, a formula phi is definable if there is some instance of it which belongs to the logic. Here I don't say if the logic is axiomatically presented or Kripke complete. And we will write like this the corresponding unifier. For example, in the minimal modal logic case, such formula is not, this formula is not derivable in K, or it is not valid, but it is unifiable. For example, if you replace P by true, here you obtain box true, and then of course the disjunction will be in K. Or if you replace P by false, you have also another unifier because that part will be equivalent to box true, and therefore it will make valid the disjunction. Still in the modal logic K, let us consider this equivalent. It contains 4 propositional variables, P, Q, R, S. And this example is coming from the language of description logic FL0, because as you see, there is no negation and disjunction and no diamond. And this equivalence possesses a K unifier, which is this substitution sigma. Because if you apply the substitution sigma to it, so let me call this the formula phi. Sigma phi is equal to P is not moved by the substitution. Q is replaced by P. And R and S are replaced by box P and P. Box P and box P and box P. And if you are aware of the fact that box distribute over conjunction, and of course conjunction is idempotent, associative, commutative, etc., then you have found a unifier. I have said that in classical propositional logic, if someone is considering a parameter-free formula, the unifiability of this formula in the context of classical logic is equivalent to its satisfiability. It is not a... Oui?
Can I ask a question
Yes?
at this point? Is it known about the decidability of unification in K?
No.
It is still an open problem.
It is still an open problem. I don't recommend young researchers to attack this problem at once.
Yes, I know this.
In your case, maybe you can address this problem because, but yes, no, I believe it is very difficult. And I will say about it in the next days. What is known about the undecidability of the unification problem is, for example, for the modal logic K, together with the universal modality. Voltaire and Zakharyachev, they proved this one, or K4 plus the universal modality. But without the universal modality, it is open if unification and admissibility are decidable. I was reminding you the fact that in classical logic or Boolean algebra, the unification problem is equivalent to the consistency problem. We have discussed about it. In most, I have written here Kripke complete, but I am not sure it is an essential condition. In the most modal logic, I think in fact in all modal logic, consistent modal logic, the unification problem is not equivalent to the consistency problem. For example, this formula, if we consider the minimal modal logic K, it is of course consistent, or it is satisfiable. There is a Kripke model which satisfies it, but it is not unifiable in K. Why it is not unifiable in K?
Because K doesn't prove anything beginning with diamond.
Exactly. If it were unifiable, it means there exists a way to replace P by phi, and then this conjunction would be a member of K, would be derivable in K. But if diamond phi, for example, it belongs to K, then diamond true would belong to K, and it is not the situation. And this This leads me to the following remark. Take L some normal modal logic, consistent. And take phi an arbitrary formula. I am discussing about a side property because it has some far relationship with this remark, but I find it interesting. It is known that the least normal modal logic which contains L plus this conjunction is inconsistent. It was first remarked by Jean Porte in the 1980s, within the context of modal logic S5. If L is modal logic S5, it was remarked by Jean Porte some 40 years ago. And then Ron Fagin, Joseph Alpern, and Moshe Vardi, in a paper in which they study the meaning of what it is to be an inference rule, they have proved this claim for arbitrary modal logic L.
Isn't it obvious? Diamond phi and diamond not phi implies diamond bottom, which is node box top. But box top belongs to the logic.
Diamond phi and diamond not phi implies diamond bottom if the diamond distribute over the conjunction. It is the situation. It is the situation, for example. You are right, it is the case, but within the context of a very restricted class of modal logic, those modal logic which contains alt1, which is the axiom corresponding to the determinism property of the accessibility relation. The proof is not difficult. Let us show it. Let us show it. So let L prime be this logic, the minimal logic containing L, minimal normal logic containing L plus this conjunction. Remark that diamond true, and it is your remark of before, diamond true belongs to L prime. Because if diamond phi is an axiom of L prime, then diamond true is derivable. So, the logic KD is included in L prime. KD is the least normal modal logic containing K plus the axiom diamond true. KD is K plus diamond true. And it is known that in KD, and in fact in all normal extension of KD, every variable free formula is either equivalent to true or to false. Because in KD, diamond true is equivalent to true, diamond false is equivalent to false. Box true is equivalent to true, and box false is equivalent to false. So in KD, all variable free formula is, I am writing quickly, is equivalent to false or to true. In the logic, is probably equivalent to false or to true. Okay, let phi prime be a variable free instance of phi. So phi prime is a variable free formula, and it is an instance of phi. The one you, for example, replace in phi all variables by true. Then by the remark concerning KD. Phi prime belongs to KD, or not phi prime belongs to KD. Phi prime belongs to KD if it is provably equivalent to true, and not phi prime belongs to KD if it is probably equivalent to false. KD is included in L prime, so phi prime belongs to L prime, or not phi prime belongs to L prime. Okay, I think you have seen. Huh? Now it will be clear. I will just study this case. Suppose that phi prime belongs to L prime. The other case will be similar. Then, by the necessitation, box phi prime belongs to L prime. But L prime is a normal modal logic, so it is closed with respect to the rule of uniform substitution. So since diamond not phi is in L prime, diamond not phi prime is also in L prime. And we have a L prime is inconsistent. The other case, of course, is the same. So it was a remark of Fagin, Alpern, and Vardy. And in fact, more recently, it has been, and I like to present it because I feel that to study unifiability of formula and admissibility, the reasoning that we have to do, sometimes it is similar to such reasoning. Later, it has been remarked by French and Humberstone. It has been remarked by French or Humberstone that, in fact, it is not needed to take the conjunction of the two diamonds. This logic is inconsistent, or adding diamond not phi is inconsistent. In fact, the inconsistency of the logic L plus diamond phi and diamond not phi does not come from the interaction between diamond phi and diamond not phi. Separately, one of these two logics is inconsistent. And the proof I can show, but it is similar to the previous one I have just shown. And there is an open problem. I'm sure you like open problems. Maybe this one is more simple. Okay, I have said arbitrary formula. Arbitrary formula in the language consisting of these connectives. The ordinary language of modal logic. But if the language is the tense language together with the converse modality, this claim does not hold anymore. There is a counterexample in the paper of French and Humberstone. The tense modality, if you know Kripke semantic, it is a modal operator which is interpreted by means of the converse accessibility relations. This one, the box, is interpreted by the help of some accessibility relation, and this box is interpreted by the help of the converse accessibility relation. If you don't know Kripke semantic, but you are familiar with the Hilbert-style axiomatization of the modal logic, the tense adding this connective is gives the obligation to consider two additional axioms, which are called the tense axiom, and which correspond in the cryptosemantic to the fact that this box is interpreted by means of the converse relation, the converse of the relation that was used to interpret this box. If we consider such a language, now the claim of French and Humberstone is not anymore true. There is a counterexample. What is the open problem is whether does it exist a formula phi in this language with the tense connective such that k plus is consistent, such that this extension is consistent.
Conjunction.
Yes, I have said before that if the formula phi only contains the box modality, such extension of k makes the logic inconsistent. But maybe there exists a formula in the extended language which makes this extension consistent.
Shouldn't it be k dot t?
K dot t.
K is unimodal logic, no? And what is box?
Yes, of course. K, tense version of k. Yes, of course. Yes. Okay. I have tried myself. I cannot say any good suggestion. So to finish in this historical overview, Rybakov, some 35 years ago, has proved that the unification problem in K4 and S4 and also in intuitionistic logic is decidable. In fact, some years before, Rybakov has been able to prove that the admissibility and the unification in S4.3 was decidable. But of course, the situation for S4.3 is more easy. And then this important result of Ghilardi, in fact it is Ghilardi 2000, he has proved that the unification in K4 and S4 is finitary. What does it mean, finitary? I have briefly mentioned before. It means that if a modal formula, phi, is unifiable, for example, in K4, it means it possesses at least one unifier. There exists at least one substitution sigma such that the result of applying sigma to phi give us a K4 valid formula. But as I have said, what we want is also to characterize the set of unifiers of a given formula in a good way. In modal logic K4 and S4, it is not always possible, if a formula is unifiable, to find the most general unifier. But in all cases when a formula is unifiable, we know that it possesses a finite minimal complete set of unifiers, and this is the result of Ghilardi. It is important to be able to know if a logic is finitary, if the unification problem in a logic is finitary, because I have said before that it is possible to reduce the unification problem to the admissibility problem. What about the converse reduction? Is it possible to reduce the admissibility problem to the unification problem? I have said before that phi is unifiable in L. It is equivalent to say that this inference rule is not L admissible. So it reduces the unification problem to the non-admissibility problem. Is it possible to make the converse reduction to reduce the admissibility problem to the unification problem? It is possible if the unification problem of the logic that we consider is finitary, unitary or finitary. It means it is possible to reduce admissibility to unification if every unifiable formula possesses a finite minimal complete set of unifiers that we can produce effectively. And, of course, it is needed the logic to be decidable. Some important result, the one I was mentioning about Voltaire and Zakharyachev, unification and admissibility for this modal logic, and in fact for any modal logic between K and K4, when the universal modality is added to the language, is undecidable. There is the famous open question. And there is also an interesting, because K seems a very simple modal logic, it is quite surprising that the unification problem in K is nullary. Nullary, it means there exists a unifiable formula which does not possess a minimal complete set of unifiers at all. So we will prove next day this property. But today we can prove that unification in K is not unitary. Let us consider this formula, this unification problem. We have seen it before. If we replace P by true, we obtain a valid formula in K, or if we replace P by false. So this formula is unifiable in K. But there is an important property of modal logic K. It is the so-called modal disjunction property. If a disjunction of that kind is derivable in K, then one of the two formulae is also derivable in K. There is a similar property in intuitionistic logic when, of course, we eliminate the modal connective. So, because of this modal disjunction property, a unifier of this formula is a substitution which replaces P by phi, for example, in such a way that box phi or box not phi belongs to K. But by the disjunction property, it implies that phi belongs to K or not phi belongs to K. If phi belongs to K, it means that the unifier we have considered is also a unifier of this unification problem. If not phi belongs to P, it means that the unifier we consider is also a unifier of that unification problem. But for sure, this unification problem has exactly one unifier. This one, there is no other possibility, or every formula which is logically equivalent to true. And for sure, this unification problem has also exactly one unifier, modulo logical equivalence, this substitution. And since these two substitutions cannot be compared, there is no substitution which is more general than both of them also. It is quite relatively simple to prove. These two substitutions constitute a minimal complete set of unifiers in K of the unification problem that we have considered. And obviously, it is not a singleton. It consists of two substitutions. So it shows that this formula is not unitary, and therefore the unification problem in K cannot be unitary. There exists formula which possess minimal complete set of unifiers, but this minimal complete set is not a singleton. Okay. Excuse me, what time is it? I don't want to keep you all the night.
It's 6:30.
Is it time to... because otherwise I can start description logic, but it will be...
No, I guess it's...
We should stop. Okay. So you are very kind not to interrupt me. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Next lecture will be on Friday at 15:30, 3:30, at 2:15.